The studio lights hummed softly, the air thick with anticipation. Millions were tuned in. Joe Rogan leaned forward, elbows on the mahogany desk, his tone sharp and deliberate. "So, Robert, yes or no, do you believe the system can still be fixed from within?" Kennedy didn't answer. He sat there, eyes lowered, fingers interlaced. 10 seconds passed, long enough to feel like an eternity. The silence wasn't empty, it was alive. Rogan blinked, almost uneasy, and even the sound engineer froze, waiting for something, anything, to fill the void. When Kennedy finally spoke, his voice trembled with quiet conviction. "Joe, that's the hardest question anyone's ever asked me on air." The audience had expected a debate. Instead, what followed was something closer to a confession. The story of that 10-second silence began long before that night. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had faced criticism all his life for his lineage, his views, his voice that carried both the strength and fragility of a man who had lived too many public battles. But this interview with Joe Rogan was different. It wasn't just politics or policy. It was a confrontation with faith in a system, faith in people, and faith in the possibility of change. As the cameras rolled, Rogan had pressed him hard, refusing to let him drift into speeches. "You talk about corruption, captured agencies, about people losing trust. So tell me, do you still believe it can be fixed? Yes or no?" The audience expected Kennedy to respond with his usual eloquence, but instead, he closed his eyes. And for those 10 seconds, he wasn't a politician. He was a man revisiting every broken promise he'd ever seen, every whistleblower silenced, every child poisoned by policy, every dream his father and uncle had carried and died for. The silence was his answer, the weight of generations distilled into stillness. When he finally spoke, his words came out measured, heavy with truth. "I used to believe the system was broken," he said. "Now I think it's people who are broken. And if people can heal, then maybe the system can too. But healing doesn't happen with a yes or a no. It happens with courage." Rogan didn't interrupt. He leaned back, thoughtful. The man across from him wasn't dodging, he was digging. Kennedy began telling stories. Not about elections or polls, but about the faces behind his cause. He spoke of a mother in Flint, Michigan, who had handed him a bottle of brown tap water and said, "They told us it's safe." He spoke of a fisherman in Louisiana who had lost everything when the oil spills poisoned his bayou. And he spoke of a nurse in Vermont who whispered through tears, "We used to trust them. Now, we don't even trust ourselves." Each story painted a picture of quiet heartbreak, not of politics, but of people forgotten. Rogan listened. For once, he didn't play devil's advocate. He just listened. Because beneath Kennedy's gravelly voice was something America hadn't heard in why.